Just switched on the cam. I hope all of you are able to see me. So in today's session, let me go ahead and share my screen as well. Let's look at a PPT presentation that I have done specifically for today's session. Let me bring that up. I hope everybody is able to see my screen and there are no issues. If you have any issues, just drop in a chat, but I believe you should see the screen appearing. Let's start off with today's session. Today we will look at predominantly two things, two key aspects as you prepare for your examination that is just around the corner. The first thing we will look at is some tips and tricks for your examination, given that this is a paper based on number one case study that has both a pre-seen as well as an unseen element. In addition to that, there would also be questions that are a couple of scenarios that you would see for the first time at the examination, which is covered as a part of your section A. And on the section B, you would have the unseen section appearing at the exam, which builds on the pre-seen material that you have seen so far. So we will start the session by looking at the exam tips and tricks before we go into an in-depth discussion and an analysis of the pre-seen material that has been shared with you sometime back on Healthcare and Leisure Private Limited, HCL. So we'll talk more about it and we'll see what could possibly be the actual company that this case study relates to from a Sri Lankan concept or a Sri Lankan context, right? So for those of you all who do not know me, let me do a quick introduction of myself. I'm Hazir Shafeek. I am an ACMA, CGMA, and I have my MBA from the University of West London. I have 8+ years of lecturing experience, lecturing professional level qualifications. Predominantly, my expertise is lecturing papers that have case study. I have 14+ years of corporate work experience, and I have 2 world prizes for my professional level subjects. And I work for a leading investment research multiple national company in Sri Lanka. So from there, without much time, we just have a couple of hours to get through quite a bit of very important content. So let's go into the slide on the key examination tips and tricks. I hope that you can see my screen. If not, please do drop a chat and let me know if you're unable to see my screen. Yep, so on this slide, I've very clearly broken down different bullet points in terms of what are the various examination tips and tricks that you can use or you need to use this for this paper. You need to understand that this paper is unlike much of the papers that core knowledge-wise test accounting or numbers, but this paper is theory. Obviously, the answers have to be essay type. And there are some tips that I would like to share with you in terms of how you can approach an examination that requires you to write essay type answers and how you can articulate or make your answer in such a way that it becomes easy for your marker. It makes the life of the marker easy because your presentation style is very important. So first things first, you need to have an absolute clear understanding of the requirement. That is very important. You need to understand your requirement very clearly. For example, if you look at the key action words, for your examination, right? So let me go here and show you some of the key action verb list, right? So there is define, draw, identify. On tier 2, there is discuss, explain, interpret, recognize, record, summarize, application, apply. I'm just taking a few. If you can see on the screen, there are multiple action verbs which can be elements or the key area in your question. It is very important at the exam you identify what you are being asked to do. When you have to explain something, make sure that your explanation is in detail. Make sure that the points that you're making are relevant. It is completely the opposite of summarize. In summarize, you give a brief highlight of what are the key items. So if you try to summarize for a question that is explained, you're obviously going to lose marks because you are not doing what you're asked to do. And that is not professional. And in a paper like this, especially given the fact that it is at your strategic level, you need to demonstrate professionalism in your answering. So for that, you need to have an absolute clear understanding of what are the requirements of the paper. So for example, let's take this pilot paper, yeah? I'm sure you guys would have taken time to go through the pilot paper. Let's just take a simple question here. Recommend. It's very important that you read the requirement very slowly. Don't passively read it. Recommend 3 critical success factors that would be important. No, don't do that. Take it slow. Recommend 3 critical success factors that would be important to Kaufland when developing the plan for the first 5 years of online retail operations in Sri Lanka. It's a 3-line requirement here, but it is very important to get the key message. You need to recommend, so it is a recommendation that you're making to the management. In your recommendation, you need to include the critical success factors, number 2, 3 critical success factors that would be important to develop the plan for the first 5 years. You need to be very clear. It's talking about the first 5 years for the retail operations in Sri Lanka. So you need to clearly scope your answer. So the requirement is to recommend 3 critical success factors that will be important for the first 5 years of retail operations. Once you have scoped it, you will need to clearly articulate your answer that is relevant to this. Don't be all over the place. Address the question as given. That is extremely important for an essay type answering question paper, right? The second important element that you need to focus on is time management. So if you see this paper has a total of 180 minutes. I hope you can see my screen. You can see my calculation. This paper has 180 minutes, 3 hours. Separately, you get 15 minutes of reading time, which you need to use to your full effort. It gives you a total of 100 marks, which means you have 1.8 minutes per mark. You have 1.8 minutes per mark. So let's look at this first question. 6 marks, 6 marks. So that would be 6 into 1.8. You have a total of about 10.8 minutes or 11 minutes to answer that requirement. Time management is crucial for this type of paper because this is not like you're preparing a balance sheet or some calculation or preparing some accounts. This is where you're writing, and it is easy for you to forget about time, get carried away and write at your own will. Don't do that. Always when you write an answer, have a clear plan. For example, if you started this paper at 2 p.m., let's say hypothetically, you should finish this. You should finish this question at what time? So you started at 2, you should finish it at 2:11. You started at 2, you should finish it at 2:11 because you have only 11 minutes for 6 marks, right? That is because it's 1.8 minutes per mark. If you do not finish your answer in the allotted time, this is the golden rule of time management. If you don't finish it, move on to the next question. It is very important for you to move on to the next question, because if you keep spending time on the previous question, you're eating into the opportunity to earn marks on the next question. Because you can easily get carried away because you're writing essay type answers. So stay focused, be extremely disciplined in your time management. And for you to manage your time, you should have done sufficient practice. You should have done sufficient practice with your revision planning, right? So that is very important. And I hope that you have taken time to revise. While revising, I hope that you have made an attempt to write answers for as many questions as possible. That is really important, right? Because it shouldn't be for the first time that you go and attempt the paper and then you start writing. That is not going to work. You should have spent sufficient time doing past papers. You should have done the pilot paper in full, timed it and completed it. Only then can you discipline yourself when it comes to time management. So that is exceptionally important, right? Active versus passive reading. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this particular statement. Active reading, passive reading. Passive reading is something that you should not do. Active reading is what you need to master for this paper. Passive reading is just reading the question. So let's say this is your paper, let's assume. So you have part B, which is the continuation of the pre-scene. So you have the requirement. Now let me tell you what is truly active reading in its essence. You need to go and first read what are the various requirements here. So the first requirement is to recommend an appropriate strategy for a specific division that is based on Michael Porter. Contrast two cultures of the two separate divisions. I need to have a clear understanding of the 7 requirements that are given here before I start reading this content. And that applies to your previous questions as well. Before you start reading this paragraph, you need to understand what are the requirements, so that when you start reading, you are reading actively, looking for the answers that you need to reproduce when you write the start writing the answer. So that way, once you have read the requirement, you're able to go back, read the case with the questions at the back of your head, so that you can pick the answer from the case. For a paper like this, most of the time, you would see that there is the answer already in the case. For example, there was a question about culture. So if you can see here, the report further specified that authority of decision making is delegated to individuals who are in particular roles or positions within the division. You see that? So that means there seems to be delegation. There seems to be people who are at the lower end allowed to make decisions. They are given the freedom to make decisions, which means there will be a culture of motivation. You see that? So the answer is always in the case, and it's very important for you to read the case actively than passively. Passive reading is you forget about what is here. You just read it for the sake of reading it, and then you go back and start reading this content. Now that is not going to work. You need to actively read it, looking for the answer. And as you see stuff, you need to underline, and you should say this applies to question 1, this applies to question 2, question 3. When you finish reading the case, you should already have your answer plan. You should have the answer plan for each of these ready in your hand. It should be readily available with you so that once you start writing, it's just a matter of replicating or making your points, what you had already made. You amplify it, make it big, and write the answer at full length. So that is extremely important, right? And another skill that you need to master is what I call as concise business writing. Concise business writing, let me make it very simple for you. What concise business writing means is writing to the point and not beating around the bush. Write your answer to the point. Make the marker's job easy. How do you make the marker's job easy? When you write an answer, for every point, have a subheading. Let's see an example, right? Analyze, let's take, design the extended marketing mix that the machine tech division can use to promote its new services to the clients of other heavy machine manufacturers, right? So how can you use subtopics here? So you can first explain kind of what is extended marketing mix, and then what are the three elements of the extended marketing mix. You have people, you have process, and you have physical evidence. So put a subtopic and say people, and then under that write everything that you are going to design for the people. What are the skills of the people? What aspects of training do you need to look at for the people who are going to be involved? Then look at process and explain the elements of process. Then you have physical evidence, explain the elements of physical evidence. So use these three as subtopics so that your answer is very clearly structured and it is easy as a marker to mark your answer. So when you structure it nicely, your marker will be motivated. When he looks at your paper, it looks very nicely presented. That is important for an essay type paper. Yeah, so please make sure you do clear headings, subheadings, right? How do I plan and structure my answer? That's what we spoke about a little while back. Read the requirement very slowly, break down the requirement, write down points on the side, scribble the points down, and then start your answer, amplifying your points. Because as the age-old saying goes, failing to plan is planning to fail, right? And yet the exam, with the amount of questions and the amount of content to read, you can easily panic. Do not panic. Do not get stressed at the exam. It's very important for you to be physically fit in the days before the exam. So be physically fit, drink plenty of water, eat on time, get enough sleep before the exam. And when you go to the exam, if you feel like you're stressed, take a minute, breathe in, breathe out, relax yourself, you should be okay. Very important to not put yourself under too much of stress, right? For example, if I am running a marathon tomorrow, I wouldn't run a marathon today to practice. Because if I run the marathon today, tomorrow when I do my actual event, I'm going to be tired. So the day before the exam, take it slow, relax, rest, be fit just before you go to the exam, right? Make the most important or crucial points first. Don't start with the low important points. Start with the most important points at the top. When you write a report to your boss, he wants to see the most important points at the top. Then gradually go down to the least important points. So the start of your answer has to be very impactful that covers the key points. And that's a skill you need to master when it comes to writing essay type questions. And also within your answer, make sure that you do not repeat the points that you already made. If you repeat the points that you already made, you're obviously not, number one, you're not going to get marks. Number two, it's a sheer waste of time. So make sure you don't mention the same thing. Your boss wouldn't like it if you write the same points over and over again. So take that mentality to the exam. if you are given these requirements at work, how would you approach it? And that practical approach is very important for answering essay type questions, right? So these, what you saw on this slide, are extremely critical when it comes to the tips that you need to use for a paper of this caliber, for a paper of this structure, right? All of these points are things that you need to master in the next few days through practice, so that when you get to the exam, it's like playing a cricket match. When you play a cricket match, you don't go and first time bat or ball at the match. You need to practice in the nets. You need to practice in the nets on how to bat, how to bowl. And you need to do that. You need to sit and start writing answers. Only if you sit and start writing answers continuously, you will be able to practice these tips that I just mentioned, so that when you go to the actual paper, it is just something you are familiar with than something that you are not familiar with. So make sure you make a conscious effort to do the required amount of revision in the run-up to the examination. Yeah. So for example, look at this slide here. If you write your answer like this, it's very difficult as a marker if you're just keeping on writing without leaving space, without having a line in between. Look at how this looks. You have a subtopic, then write your points, write your paragraph. Leave a line, subtopic, write your paragraph. Leave a line, subtopic, write your paragraph. It looks much better from a presentation standpoint. If I was marking your paper, I would love to see a paper that is written in this way. That a paper written in this way, very difficult to even breathe. If you look at this paper, there's no breathing space. So that writing skill is something that you need to master in the run-up to your examination. And that is crucial. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So now that we've discussed the key examination techniques, we can move to the second segment of this session, which is a detailed discussion of the pre-seen material that you have seen and read. Obviously, you should be extremely familiar with the case study. It's a 20-page case study with obviously a lot of content, a lot of relevant and very interesting content. If you look at this company, it's a very relevant and an interesting case study. What do you guys, I would like you all to type on the chat option. Do you see any similarity based on the case study content you have read? Do you link it to any company in Sri Lanka, any actual company? Does anything come to your mind? You can type it on the chat section. I would like to hear from you, because that's the type of research you should have done by now. Yeah, I have a few answers. Let me see. Okay. So I'm not going to say it out loud. I'll wait for the others to tell me as well. I have one answer. How about the rest? The rest you haven't figured out. Is very important for you to do a little bit of research on your own, do a little bit of a digging, especially when you do this case study paper. Yes, you are right. The person who responded, it looks like, from a local context, it looks like this is Hemas, right? It appears to have the similar characteristics. See, we can't 100% say it is Hemas, right? There's always a leeway. It could be something else, but it shows a major similarity between the content in the case study to the company that we know locally, right? Hemas is into pharmaceutical. Hemas has hospitals. Hemas has hotels, Serendip Leisure. Hemas is into fast-moving consumer goods. It's a large organization. It has all the telltale signs of being the company that is representative in the case study. Yeah. So it doesn't hurt to do a little bit of actual research about Hemas themselves. Visit their website, look at their financials, just have a rough idea. Obviously, don't spend a lot of time, don't spend a day or two researching about Hemas. Yeah. Don't spend a day or two, but just spend time understanding what is their business model, right? So I have a series of slides here that talk about the summary of the case study. I've done an analysis that includes the key highlights, the company structure, what is their strategy overall, how they're trying to leverage international markets, what are their culture, what is the SWOT analysis for the company, what are the individual SWOT analysis for each of the divisions, which we can take a look at. We can take a look at leadership, how Edward is playing a key role in driving the strategy, the vision, the mission of this company. Remember, two key areas. Look at this paper. The name of this paper is Strategic Management and Leadership. So we need to be very clear of what is the strategy of this company, HCL, and how the organization is being led by its leaders to drive towards the vision and the mission set by the company. And we will also go on to look at the importance of people, because obviously there is a lot of discussion on the importance of the value that the people bring in. So we will take a look at that. We will look at leadership theories. We will look at, if you see, there was a specific section on best practices, the importance of product and service quality. So we will see what are the key areas that we may need to potentially look at. We will look at some of the CSR, the energy emission related factors that have been mentioned in your case study. Technology obviously is a key area that is introduced as a part of your syllabus. There's a lot about big data, cloud computing, e-business. How do you manage research and development, especially with HCL being a part of the pharmaceutical industry? We'll see how big data can be used overall for the pharmaceutical or the healthcare industry, which can be a possible question. We need to be prepared for anything, right? Don't be biased towards any specific questions. So I don't like to say these 10 questions will come for the exam. No. We should be ready for any type of question, and that is why it is very important in today's session. One of the key things that I would like to do is for us to build a better understanding of this company. We will try to build a better understanding of this company by reading the case study together. So we will read the case study together, and then we will come to my slides that I've done here, which pretty much summarizes the key points that has been given to you in your pre-seen content. So we will summarize it and we will kind of put it into perspective by linking the areas of the case study to your syllabus. That way we improve our preparedness for the exam and we can tackle any question that comes at the exam, right? So that's the approach that I will be taking in the next, we have about an hour and a half. So let's use that very effectively to build a full understanding of this company, right? So let's go to the case study. Let's go to the case study. I'm going to open the case study here. I'm going to zoom it slightly so that you all can see it very clearly on the screen. And let's read it. As we read it, let's try to discuss key areas. Let's try to understand the case study better. So I will be explaining some of it by applying and going back to your syllabus area, right? So let's read it very slow, nice and easy. So HCL, Healthcare and Leisure Private Limited. HCL is one of the largest companies in Sri Lanka. It is well established both in the health and leisure sectors. So you can see it's a large company. It is a large company. It is not a small company that is now starting to grow. It already had a growth strategy in the past. Remember growth strategies that you learned in your syllabus? And some of its growth strategies have successfully worked, and they are in many areas. They are in many areas. If you see, they were very well diversified as a business and has its own company philosophy, which has grown since inception. So it's a philosophical company. If you had read the rest of the case study, you would know that Edward has a very clear vision, a very clear ideology in terms of how to grow this business. They are not complicated. They are not all over the place. They're clearly structured with the philosophy of growth and ethical business. Their philosophy, if you look at it, is running an ethical business, which is very important given some of the sectors like healthcare, running hospitals, making pharmaceutical products, medicines. You need an ethical philosophy, and also they are continuously looking at growth. Since inception, they've been continuously growing. If you had noticed, right? They start small and gradually you would see the company become bigger and bigger, right? HCL's founder, Edward De Silva, is a gentleman with high ethical standards and solid business values. You see that, right? It speaks about business values. It's a key section in your strategy syllabus, right? What is it? Integrity, valuing employees, right? He values employees. He values the ideas of employees. He values in improving his employees, giving them freedom, being honest. He has showcased all of this in running this company. He is very well respected in the Sri Lankan community for his high ethical values. And these values have greatly assisted HCL to achieve its current level of growth and acceptance by the Sri Lankan and international community. You see that? His ethics, they say as per this case, is one of the key reasons for the growth of the company and the acceptance of the company locally as well as internationally, right? So ethics is a lot here, right? So you should kind of have an idea of the ethics section in your strategy syllabus, right? You should have an idea, clear idea of the ethical code. If there's a question on the ethical code, you should be easily able to replicate your answer. If there's a question on the importance of ethics, you should be able to easily answer why it is important as a business to be ethical. Historical overview. Let's look at the journey. Let's look at the history of the company. Edward qualified with a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Peradeniya in 1965. His father was a traditional Ayurvedic practitioner. Look at the story. Remember, in culture, when you learn culture in strategy, an important theory was cultural web. And under the cultural web, a key factor that determines culture was stories, no? Was stories. Look at this. There is an interesting story. He did his degree in chemistry. Why? Because he was probably motivated by his father, who was back in the day in traditional Ayurvedic or indigenous medicine, which led to him to set up a company of this magnitude, which means it is true passion. It's truly something he loves. Upon graduation, Edward joined a reputed drug company as a chemist. So he started small as a chemist. He had the ambition of running his own company one day after obtaining the experience of working as a chief chemist for his employer. So he got the experience when he was employed. Edward's dream was to establish a manufacturing plant for pharmaceutical products. See that? If you had read the rest of the case study, you would have noticed that the government is trying to reduce the price of key medicine. And you would have noticed that still Sri Lanka imports 90% of the drugs and the medicine that we need. Which means it's a great opportunity for HCL because HCL has its own manufacturing plant. If they can do things right, and if we can manufacture the drugs in Sri Lanka, with the government reducing the prices, there is going to be an increase in demand for the drugs. And if we can make those, HCL will be a front runner in manufacturing medicine in Sri Lanka. And that too using domestic raw materials. They're very specific. Domestic raw materials, which means the main goal is to reduce as much as possible the reliance on imports. In 1969, Edward established Healthcare Drugs Private Limited as a wholesale and retail chemist and druggist in Colombo Fort. So what did he mainly do initially? Wholesale and retail. The company initially imported drugs and distributed them among an authorized dealer network in the island. Edward invested the initial capital requirement in 1978. He was able to persuade his friend George Gunawardena, who was a qualified economist from the same university he attended, to join HCD and invest in the company in order to expand it to provide laboratory supplies and medical equipment. So they wanted to now move into making laboratory supplies, provide laboratory supplies, these supplies needed for the labs, and also to make the medical equipment that is used in hospitals. So you start as wholesale, retail drug distributor of imported medicine, and then now you're moving into laboratory supplies as well as medical equipment, as well as medical equipment. In 1978, HCD reached a milestone in the healthcare industry in Sri Lanka by setting up the company's first pharmaceutical and veterinary products manufacturing facility. You see that? They started to set up the first manufacturing facility, which, if you can remember, was Edward's dream. With the help of its bank that provided the required loan facility to establish the manufacturing plant, Edward once again persuaded a few of his friends to invest in the company in order to find the capital that was required in addition to the bank loan. While the pharmaceutical business of HCD was its best, Edward was eager to diversify the business. See, he is focusing on diversifying, taking to a higher level by manufacturing toiletries and personal care products. This is when, in 95, HCG entered into the fast-moving consumer goods sector, the FMCG sector, which created value to the company in many ways. The two sectors, pharmacy and FMCG, are led by two directors, Kamal Dias and Vasana Silva, who is Edward's wife. When you see that, you should see a direct relation link with your subject on audit. So you have a subject on audit. So there is a dependence issue, right? There is an independence issue here. There is a familiarity threat. You should pick those points up. When you see these points, you should Pick those, because that can be a potential question. There can be a question about independence, not in this paper, but in the paper on your audit and assurance, right? In 2004, HCD went on to establish its first hospital. Look at it. They are pretty much focusing quite a lot on the healthcare sector, right? They're moving now into hospitals. Now, what is this? This is, what can you call this in your growth strategy? As a strategy from a growth standpoint, this is forward integration. No? Forward integration. You're going down the supply chain. Related diversification. Remember, in the Unzov's matrix, this is related diversification because you're already there in the healthcare sector and now you're going downwards in the supply chain where you're starting up a hospital, right? Then in 2008, HCD was restructured. It introduced vision and mission statements. Now you have to introduce a vision and mission statement by 2008. And that is because the company is now growing. It is becoming big. Now you need to have a very clear strategy. Remember, as per the rational planning model of strategy that you have studied, the first step to coming up with any strategy is for you to very clearly understand what is the vision and what is the mission. And based on that is when you set the objectives. You remember the rational planning model, the diagram, you set the objectives, then you do an internal analysis and an external analysis, and you arrive at the strategic choices. You evaluate the strategic choices, and then you implement your strategy, right? So now with the company becoming big, it's very important for you to have a very clear vision and a mission. It changed its name to Healthcare and Leisure Private Limited. Earlier it was HCD, now they changed it to HCL, allowing it to diversify the business into different sectors, such as tourism and logistics in the future. So giving it an opportunity to diversify into other areas. Let's look at what is the vision. To be a regional leader. There you go. Very important word. That too in the Indian subcontinent. Regional leader in the Indian subcontinent, right? So it is in our Asian region, in the Indian subcontinent, they would like to be a regional leader. So you should, when you read this, immediately it should have come to your thought process that internationalization is a key area in your syllabus, right? How do you grow internationally? What are the strategies to grow internationally? What are the market entry strategies? The use of the Hofstede cultural framework. Do you remember the Hofstede cultural dimensions? Use of the cage framework. Do you remember the use of the cage framework when you go into a new country? Let me open the section here. So you remember the cage framework, cultural, administrative, economic, geographical, the Porter's diamond, Hofstede cultural dimensions, and the different market entry strategies. These are key components of your internationalization topic. So looks like Edward has a vision to internationalize in the future. It can be easily a question where a certain, there can be a question where a certain division wants to be moved to the international market. Let's say the leisure sector or the FMCG sector wants to have an international operation. How do we do it? What is the best way to enter? What are the cultural factors that we need to look at if we are entering, for example, into India? You should be prepared to answer a question on internationalization. Look at the mission statement, right? Let's look at the mission statement. We are committed to deliver to our shareholders the highest possible returns for our employees. We are committed to creating exciting new opportunities. You see that? Shareholder, they talk about for employees. For our business partners, we will deliver excellence every time. To the business partners, we are responsible corporate citizen who focuses on the lives of the community. You see, the mission statement talks about all of the stakeholders. They talk about the shareholder, the employees, they talk about the business partners, and they talk about the community. And they say how they want to have the nation, the country first in making all decisions. So that really are some of their values, that truly are some of their values, right? In 2009, just after the end of the civil war in Sri Lanka, HCL entered the leisure and travel business as tourism was starting to become a primary economic sector in Sri Lanka at that time. Buonaga Fonseca, who held 10% of ownership of HCL, as was a member of the board of directors of the company, was appointed to overlook this new SBU, right? So they now diversified into a completely new area, which is tourism, which they have no prior experience, which is a complete diversification. If you can remember the Anzov's growth matrix, this would be unrelated diversification. This would be a type of an unrelated diversification, right? Buonaga, who is a member of the Chartered Institute of Management UK, so this is the person who is leading the leisure and travel industry, had significant experience working in the tourism sector, both domestic as well as international, in a CEO's capacity. HCL first entered the travel sector by establishing an outbound and inbound travel agency that offered tailor-made tour packages. You see that? So mainly it was tailor-made tour packages. That's how they started. They didn't start by having hotels or anything. They were an outbound and inbound travel agency that offered tailor-made tour packages. A few years later is when they expanded and started their own hotel, which was called HCL Coral Gardens in Kikkadua, which was a 5-star hotel. You see that? So they wanted to start at 5-star level. Obviously, with Edwards' vision being setting up a company that is prestigious and high value, they start to acquire they opened its first hotel, which is a 5-star hotel that had a capacity of 100 rooms by 2012. Buonaga is now working hard to achieve the target of opening another 2 5-star hotels, which means they want to expand. What is this? This is new product development. They are planning on opening 2 new 5-star hotels. New product development in your Anzov matrix. Edward, who is the chairman of HCL, decided to enter the logistics sector in 2010 after analyzing the continuous growth in this sector and considering the economic policy of the government. You see that? So they are now getting into logistics. What do they do in logistics? The company built a logistics warehouse in Sidua and Katunayaka. Why Sidua and Katunayaka? Why do you think? Why do you think it's Sidua and Katunayaka? Any idea? It's closer to the airport, right? Probably they deal with a lot of goods that are exported and imported. So here you go. Partnership agreements with a number of internationally recognized companies, partnership with a number of internationally recognized maritime and airline agents. The logistics sector is headed by another director, shareholder Kusal Pereira, who is a good friend of Edward. He is a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport in the UK. He also has expert knowledge and work experience in the capacity of a CEO in the logistics sector, both locally and internationally. So he has brought a, he is also a friend of Edward. You look at Edward, he is only putting people who he knows very close into running this company. There's obviously a familiarity threat involved here. Right? There's a familiarity threat definitely involved from an auditing standpoint. Yeah. Okay, so that is the logistics sector, right? Transporting goods, exporting goods, importing goods, storing them. That is the type of work they would be offering to their customers who are exporting the goods. You offer a facility to store their goods. When the imports come, you say, have a facility to store it, right? Sudat Pereira, another one of Edward's good friends who has invested in 10% of the stated capital of HCL, encouraged Edward to enter the power and energy sector, completely new territory, right? This gave an opportunity to enter into an agreement with the Ceylon Electricity Board to provide electricity to the national grid by building a windmill farm in Mana in 2014. It involved an investment of rupees 450 million in fixed assets to install 2 windmill plants with a total capacity of 2 megawatts to promote the alternate energy concept. So this is, windmills is not the normal way of making power in Sri Lanka, right? That's why it's called the alternate energy concepts. It's a different solution, much more economical and much more sustainable energy, right? Another 3 windmills were subsequently added in 2006 by investing 700 million to bring the total electricity generating capacity to 5 megawatts. In December 2019, HCL bought 35% of the stated capital of Healthcare Drugs Bangladesh, which is a consortium consisting of Indian and Bangladesh investors for Taka 450 million in order to enter its first overseas venture and achieve its vision for the future. Keep in mind, 35% ownership means you're not the controlling owner, but you've taken a good voting percentage. You have taken a very good voting percentage, and the other owners are Indian and Bangladesh investors, right? Edward held the chairmanship of HCL from the company's inception. From the time the company started, he has been the chairman. His unique leadership has been the key human capital that has brought the company to its current level of development. You see that? So he's played a key visionary and a charismatic role in bringing the company to where it is today. Edward has a firm belief that adding a strategic business unit to the company will continue its fast and steady growth. You would have learned business structures in your syllabus, right? Business structures. Organization structure. So what structure does Edward believe in? Looks like Edward believes in product divisionalized structure. He believes in a product divisionalized structure. However, Prabhat Jaisinghe, the Chief Executive Officer of HCL since 2017, has been against this belief and has strongly urged Edward to consider separating the individual units into unique companies in order to minimize risk and also to implement an efficient internal control system to measure the performance of each sector accurately. Probably he's saying it because if you look at these sectors, if you look at this company, each of these sectors are very unique. So Prabhat believes that having unique companies, spreading them into unique companies, then under one arm, would make more sense, which means HCL will become more like a holding company which holds these subsidiaries, right? And there are benefits, there are disadvantages, which probably is not a section that may come in the strategy management section because it's not a part of the syllabus, but it could be probably from your SL1 paper, which talks about the various benefits of listing to so on and so forth. So far, based on the content in this case study, HCL does not look like a company that has been listed. It is still a private limited company. It doesn't have share capital. So that could potentially be a weakness, so to speak, because if they list themselves, they may be able to generate faster capital. Today, what Edward mainly does is he talks to friends, asks friends to invest, or he goes and approaches the banks and takes bank loans. He has not thought about listing the company in the stock market. So that is something that you need to think about as well. Yeah. Leadership is the next key section. Let's look at leadership, right? Edward is a pioneer entrepreneur who is in transition to become a sustainable entrepreneur. So what is that, right? Let's try to break this down, and in simple English, let's try to understand it. What is a pioneer entrepreneur? Anyone who is a pioneer entrepreneur means these are entrepreneurs who are getting into a specific sector for the first time. They are pioneering it. They are the ones who are starting it. So he likes to go into areas that are new. Who is in transition to become a sustainable entrepreneur and an aspirant futurist and an ardent chemist. What is a sustainable entrepreneur? You run a business that is there for the long term. You run a marathon. You don't run a sprint. So you will have to ensure that you have good ethics. You'll have to ensure you have good CSR principles to be able to run a business for long term and not for short term. And he's an aspirant futurist. What is aspirant futurist? He wants to think about the future. If you had read the case study, you would have seen that Edward is extremely interested in adapting new technology. Making the company technology driven is one of his dreams, right? No wonder that he wants to drive innovation within the company, and that's an area of your syllabus. Innovation is very important when it comes to strategizing companies in today's context. Because if you are not futuristic and if you don't think about innovation, you are going to struggle. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're tested on the importance of adapting new technology to run the business and to support the strategy of the company. So be familiar with big data, be familiar with cloud computing, be familiar with e-businesses. Remember the B2C, the C2C, the C2B concepts, right? Today we have a couple of hours just to understand this case study better so that we are prepared for any questions. So I can't go back to the theory and explain each and every area. So I'll be talking about what are the relevant theories that you may need to go back and take a look at after today's discussion, right? So that's very important for you to be, when I'm talking to you now, you should be taking down notes, you should be taking down points so that you go back and take a look at these key areas, right? So that's very, very important. That is extremely important. Yeah, perfect. And he's also served as a director of several government bodies, which means he has good networks, he has good contacts, right? It is very important because government is a key stakeholder. When you're part of directors of several government bodies, you understand. Remember at the beginning, if you can remember, we read one of the key mission statements was to keep the country at the heart of all decision making, to keep the country at the heart of all decision making. So down those lines, it is very important for you to understand the wider objectives of the government. And Edward, serving in the past as director of several government bodies, gives him that opportunity to keep the nation's interest at heart when making decisions. Edward spent his childhood, this is a very nice statement, right? Edward spent his childhood in a village called Koratota. His early education was at the village school, and then at grade 6, he entered a leading school in Colombo. Edward was born with multiple talents, from music, for athletics, to arts. You see that? So he is an all-rounder. The message that is being given to you through this paragraph is to show you that Edward is an all-rounder. He has had experience in all of these areas, which he is now bringing back to the company. All of this he enjoyed in his free time. Edward was a popular personality at school as well as at the university. He was a visionary, we know it. He's futuristic. He has a vision whose motto was to never miss an opportunity. He doesn't like to miss an opportunity, which means continuously analyzing the external environment, doing a SWOT, doing a Porter's 5 forces analysis, doing a pestle analysis might be very important for Edward because he doesn't want to miss an opportunity. So don't be surprised if your examiner asks you to do an external analysis for a particular division. They can pick a particular division and ask you to do a Porter's 5 forces or to do a SWOT analysis. Yes, his statement says that he wants to be ahead. He doesn't want to miss an opportunity. He played rugby and basketball for his school and the university. And under his unique leadership, the teams were able to win national level championships. So he has led his teams to victory. And he's been a leader from back in the school. Edward always believed the capabilities of his team and trusted them, right? He trusted him. That is a key statement. You see that? Which means, I think, he allows his team to make decisions. He's a leader who gives autonomy or freedom. He's a democratic leader. He uses the participative style of leadership. You should be remembering these terms because leadership theories is a key part of your syllabus. Leadership theories is a key part of your syllabus. He ensured that his team participated in regular training and used novel techniques during practice and tournaments. You see that word? Novel techniques. What is novel techniques? What does novel techniques mean? New techniques. See, Edward always, what we've understood so far is he likes to try new things and never miss an opportunity. And that has been coming from his school days. That's what he's trying to show. Even when running his business, he always mentioned the importance of training and acquiring the latest technology, not just for day-to-day work, but also for the business culture. I don't know whether you realize this, but this particular sentence is very important to me personally in the case study. Because your case study or your syllabus, sorry, not your case study, your syllabus places a specific section on creating value for people. How do you train people? How do you develop people? That is covered here. And there is a separate section on use of latest technology for running the business. Do not be surprised at all if you get a question that says, how can the healthcare division make use of big data or make use of cloud computing? How can the FMCG division make use of e-business? Not specific. I mean, I'm not being very specific. E-business is very broad, but at the exam, the requirement can be very specific. So be ready for a question on technology for this paper. And the importance of managing and leading people, how to motivate them. Why Edward's style of leadership has been working, right? Why Edward's style of leadership has been motivating his employees. Edward was a strong believer of partnering and building relationships with people. He trusted everyone who worked in his company, and he worked hard to achieve his dream of becoming a leading regional player. You see that? His goal is to go international. The board of HCL, which is comprised of 8 executive directors and 2 independent directors who are experts in the pharmaceutical and travel sectors, always gave tremendous support to make Edward's vision a reality, right? Edward firmly believes that the employees are the strength of the company and provides all the facilities. Look at it. He gives them all of the benefits, transport, food, logistics for certain staff members in order to keep them productive and loyal to the organization. The employees are paid well. This is very important. And there are long-standing employees working in the company. He is able to retain the employees. There is less labor turnover. There is less staff turnover. Edward inspires his board members as well as employees to achieve unexpected and remarkable results. So that he gives workers autonomy. What is autonomy? Freedom, as well as the authority to make decisions once they have been trained. Right? So there can be a twist to the story. Sometimes in your unseen part, there can be a new manager or a director who is very autocratic and doesn't allow employees to make decisions. So you might have to explain the importance, how this style of leadership has worked in HCL, why it has been working. So potentially you can have a question like that. So don't be surprised if you're tested on leadership styles. If you can remember leadership theories, there are 3 different theories. One is the trait theories, which believes that leaders are born and not made. The second one is your style theories. Under this is where you learn Blake and Mountain's management grid. You learn the cell style, the autocratic style, the democratic style, the participative, the joints, all of the styles. And there's a third style, which is a contingency theory, right? Contingency theory. Under that, you have learned John Adair's action-centered leadership. What is contingent styles of leadership? Adapting your leadership style to the situation. So very important to have a very clear idea of the leadership styles and the relevant benefits and the disadvantages, because there is a specific section given to you in the case study with the heading leadership. So be ready. And in your syllabus, let me go to the study text. This area is important. People and value creation. Do you see that? Because that leadership section that we just went through speaks a lot about people and value creation, if you did realize, right? Speaks a lot about people and value creation. So these areas, the human resource management, planning, recruitment, selection, employee motivation, performance management, have an idea of these areas, because there's a lot of talk about leadership style, and there's also a lot of talk about employees being motivated, being given. Remember, there was a section here about transport, food, logistics. So that has a direct link with your pay and reward systems as motivators. There can be a question why it is important to give these rewards to drive performance. Those are key areas that you need to focus on. Yeah. Best practice and the level of product and service quality, right? Best practice and the level of product and service quality. Yeah. So let's take a look at that. Pharmaceutical companies need to adhere to professional and regulatory standards. Of course, you're in the profession of making medicine, which in return translate into an increase in revenue. Why? Because when you adhere to these standards, see, look at that. That content is a sentence very important. If you adhere to these standards, your revenue will increase. Because if you adhere to standards, then only the doctors will prescribe your medicine. Then only the patients will be comfortable in using your medicine. So it will have an obvious direct impact on revenue. The criticality of the pharmaceutical industry is extremely high. And therefore, it is important for pharmaceutical companies to focus a lot on meeting and maintaining standards. Obviously, right? You're in the business of essentials. Medicines are essentials. You need to stick to the standards. HCL is a manufacturer as well as a leading importer and distributor of a wide range of pharmaceutical products, healthcare, and biotechnology products. It received ISO 9001 2000/2008 certificate from SL4, becoming one of the few Sri Lankan pharmaceutical companies to win this prestigious quality certificate. So can I say, when you learned internal analysis, you learned core competence and unique resources. If this ISO certification is with only a very few companies, it means HCL has a unique resource. It is a unique resource that they can use to sell their products. See the link between the content and your syllabus area. That is very important for you to build. Only then you can be ready for any question. I've been using this word from the beginning of today's session. You have to be ready for any questions. And that's why in today's session, we are going to read everything in your case study so that you understand the company better, linking to your syllabus area, and you're able to bring that linkage when you answer your question. So any type of question that is thrown at you, I want you to be prepared and ready to approach it, right? Don't go with your mindset, these are the questions that will come. When you go with the mindset, oh, these are the questions I think that will come, and when you see completely new type of questions, you are going to be disappointed at the exam. So don't do that. Don't go biased thinking these are the questions I will get. Keep your mind open. Be ready to understand the case study better, very clearly. When you have an understanding of the case study at the highest level, you'll be able to tackle any particular question that would come as a part of this paper, right? So that is key. So let's continue reading. The certificate was presented to HCL after assessing and evaluating its internal operational procedures, facilities, and the quality of services it provides to the Sri Lankan healthcare sector. Operational procedures. Can you all type on the chat section which area this relates to? What syllabus area? This is a specific syllabus area that this relates to. What is it? You should know it by now. Any idea? What is the syllabus area? No one seems to be responding. I'm very surprised. So let's go to your book here, right? operations management, quality. This section of your syllabus has a direct application. This section of your syllabus has a direct application to this section. Best practice and quality of the product. Operational management. Yes, I have an answer. Operational management. Guys, be talkative. Give me, when I ask a question, just let me know your thoughts. Very important for you to think whether you are aware of the subject areas, right? So that's very important. So product quality, operational procedure, direct link to operations management. I should have a very clear idea is under strategy implementation. It's under strategy implementation. 3 parts. Strategy has 3 parts, no? Strategic position, strategy formulation, and strategy implementation. I hope you have watched my video uploaded on our learning space, the golden 5 hours, where I've covered all of these areas at length for a session of about 5 hours. So that's an area that you can go back. Spoken about some of these areas on strategy at length in that session. You can go there if you need more details or to get a deeper understanding of the casual issues surrounding your syllabus areas, right? So going back to this, going back to our case study. Right, going back to our case study. HCL has adhered to implementing and maintaining stringent quality standards. Your just-in-time, your Six Sigma, remember those, yeah? Kaizen, and this is what your TQ and total quality management, remember those principles. Direct link, as you can see, there's a direct link. And this is what led to it to earn the quality standards certification. Since drugs are essential temperature sensitive items, it is important to control and regulate. There comes an important area. Look at this. Look at this area, right? I'm going to zoom in a bit. Since drugs are essential temperature sensitive items, it is important to control and regulate the temperature in the areas where the drugs are stored. The manufacturing plant of HCL is located in the Horana Industrial Zone with a 20-acre extent of land surrounding the manufacturing plant. That means there is so much of space, right? As a chairman at Verb believes it is a responsibility of the company to ensure that drugs are stored, transported, and distributed within the optimum range of temperature as specified by the manufacturer or the regulator. Similarly, the company needs to be extremely careful when distributing drugs and adopt necessary measures to maintain cold chain requirements during transport as well. Some of those the medicines that they need to be kept at proper temperature levels. What happens is when you leave medicine outside of the allowed temperature range, the efficiency or the efficacy, the effectiveness of the medicine starts to reduce. Therefore, what this paragraph is trying to say is when you store this medicine, when you transport the medicine, it is very important to keep the temperature within that optimum range. Any area of the syllabus that you feel is important here? Could you all let me know? What area do you think is important? In the strategic management, obviously there is a lot about ISO certification and all, which can link back to your audit areas, right? It can easily link back to your audit areas. My question to you is on strategic management and leadership, what area does it ring any bells in your head? Can you link it to any area? Can you let me know? It's okay even if you get the answer, just make an attempt. Okay, since no one is making an attempt, let's take a look at it, right? So what is this? What is this section? Elements of supply chain management, warehousing management system, inventory management, physical distribution and logistics systems. Very important. Medicine needs to be transported at the right temperature. The way you transport, the types of transport, a warehouse management system to identify all the inventory fast. Just in time ordering. You see that inventory management, these are all key areas because you should see a direct link in this paragraph. So you should be familiar with the inventory management section. Physical distribution and logistics system. How do you distribute? Look at this. How do you dispatch effectively to the customer, especially considering that these are temperature controlled medicine, channels, physical environment, physical movement of the goods, methods of transport, location of the warehouse is important. You have to get it on time. Size of the vehicle, type of vehicle, does the vehicle need to have ACs? Think about those things because that's what your examiner is trying to make you think by this statement. That's what you need to develop. That's the understanding of the case you need to develop, right? In addition to such technical requirements, basic office conditions such as efficacy, cleanliness, and general working atmosphere were also taken into consideration when presenting the ISO certification. Edward has said that it is important to commit to these requirements in order to meet ISO standards consistently. You have to meet it all the time. The certification is renewed once in 3 years, and SLSI closely monitors the standards and the quality of service. You're constantly monitored, right? I'm not going to spend too much time on financial strategies. I will, in the interest of time, we have 35 minutes. We'll pick up the key areas related to strategy and leadership, right? So we will look at overview of risk management, right? Risk management is once again a key area relevant to your audit subject. But let's take a look at it, right? One of HCL's objectives, because there could be areas that can be tested here. You can pick items from here for your answer for the strategic management paper as well, right? One of HCL's objective is to, by the way, don't think that, okay, this is financial strategy and it will be in your financial paper. No, because this content also you can use for your answer on this paper, right? Why I'm skipping it is because I have summarized this content on my slides. So when we go to my slides, we will take a look at it, right? Overview of risk management. One of HCL's objectives to ensure that the multitude of risks arising due to companies' diversified business operations are successfully managed with a view of safeguarding shareholder wealth and company assets. Obviously, the goal of proper risk management and internal controls is to ensure that you safeguard the assets of the company, thereby safeguarding the shareholders' wealth. Throughout its journey, HCL has adopted a business strategy affiliated with risk management principles, focusing on wider sustainable development and having a constructive social impact. The company's robust corporate governance structure, which considers risk management, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, internal audit process, certifies that impact of all the risk identified for both the business unit and the group are proactively managed. So that is there, this particular paragraph explains to you how they manage their risks, right? The risk management process at HCL involves, obviously, you know the steps in risk management is risk identification, analyzing the risk, evaluating the risk based on what? Impact, likelihood, reporting on the risks, and you continue to monitor the risk, right? It starts from the business divisional level, the divisions, SBUs, right? The head of each division in every business unit is expected to identify and record the significant risks throughout its value chain. Risks that have a significant impact on the division's performance are discussed at board meetings from time to time. Great. The finance director, however, is not satisfied with the practice of risk management process at HCL. There you go. There seems to be something wrong. Since regular updates have not been given to the board in the past, despite the risk management process being in place for quite some time. So there's an issue with risk reporting. You see this stage, reporting stage, there seems to be a failure, right? He has advised the board that this process should be reviewed on a priority basis. He has also suggested that a subcommittee should be appointed to study and report to the board on the importance of the role played by the COSO framework. So you should have an idea of the COSO framework in your audit paper. And you should have an idea of the risk management framework, which is a WACA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. You need to have a clear idea of these two frameworks, even though these will not be directly tested in the strategic management paper. But it's important for you to understand that this can have a link to your other papers. So be prepared for that, right? However, the subcommittee that was appointed to review the existing internal controls of HCL observed that HCL's chief internal auditor has to report to the finance director of the company. Independence issue. Independence issue. He shouldn't directly respond to the report to the finance director. And the finance director is involved in deciding the scope of the internal auditor and the audit plan. Problem. In the meantime, a massive fraud was detected in HCL in relation to the payroll preparation and payments. This process was handled by an employee who was with the company for more than 10 years. You see that there has been a fraud. As he appeared to be a loyal employee, the management did not regularly oversee his functions. A complete internal control failure. Right? Looks like a huge weakness. We will be doing a SWOT for this. Definitely we have to do a SWOT for our strategic management paper, and we need to identify this as a key weakness in the company. At a recent board meeting, the finance director explained the details of a letter received from the Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standards Monitoring Board on several significant non-compliances observed in respect of accounting and fair value estimates made by the company during 1890. That's a big issue, right? Because it has been flagged by the regulators. It has been flagged by the regulators, yeah? So be very prepared. I mean, this is a very good paragraph that kind of gives you to some extent an idea of how you can prepare for your risk audit, corporate governance related paper, right? During a recent board meeting, the finance director also mentioned the current global economic downturn faced by the world's leading economies due to COVID-19 and the importance of having a sound risk management process in the company. The chairman of HCL highlighted that the world is currently experiencing lockdowns and restrictions on travel across countries and cities. Hence, there's a direct impact on the hospitality sector. So be prepared for a question, right? How can you diversify the hospitality sector? If you look at the hospitality sector, it doesn't look like they're focusing a lot on the local market. But if you see last few days after the lockdown, there was a lot of business locally when it comes to holidays. Did HCL make use of it as a strategy? It's something that you can question. And we need to be very clear when we do the SWOT, how for each division, you need to understand for each division how COVID-19 has an impact. And I will discuss that with you shortly when we get to the slides. All right. So then we have our sector overview, right? So let's quickly browse through and look at the content, whether we are on track for our session. So let's go back to the sector overview. This is very important, guys, right? So in the sector review, there is details given about each sector or each division. I'm going to take your attention for a bit to the pilot paper, right? And in the pilot paper, the case study, the unseen content, look at the questions, right? So look at this, an appropriate strategy for the well-born division. Talks about the division only, yeah? Here again, well-born division and solar electro divisions. You see that? Here, the question is about the solar electro division. This is for overall, the entire Pinnacle company. This is for the machine tech division. This is again for the well-born and solar electro divisions. This is for the entire company. Now, what do you see in this? Can you tell me, can you type it on chat and tell me what do you see? What do you note there? Division. Division here. Division here. What do you note? What do you think? There is obviously going to be questions that focus on specific divisions. So it is very important for you to have a clear idea, a clear knowledge of each division. You need to have a clear idea and a clear knowledge of each division, right? So that is extremely important. And that's why this section, which is the section on sector review, is something that you need to be very familiar with. Every sector, you need to very clearly understand what they do, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are their opportunities, what are their threats, right? FMCG. HCL specializes in a range of products for babies as well as adults, including hair, skin, and oral care products and fragrances. You see, they're diversified in the FMCG sector already. They're not doing certain type only. They seem to be diversified, right? HCL's home and personal care portfolio continues to delight householders with safe Sri Lankan products are deeply connected to your values, right? In line with the mission statement where they make decisions with the nation at heart. That's what they're doing with this division, looks like. It remains the brand of choice for baby care. Monopoly looks like. Beauty soap, hair oil, oral care, feminine hygiene, and laundry detergent. This sector has gradually grown each year and has now acquired a 25% market share. Has now acquired a 25% market share, which means they have high market share in the FMCG industry. Did you look at their revenues? I hope you have seen their revenues. What is the largest sector? What is the largest sector? Can you tell me for HCL? Can any of you answer that? What is their largest sector? Anyone with the answer? Go ahead, type it out on the chat option. I hope you know how to use it. Let's see. I have a few answers here. So I have an answer that says FMCG. I have another answer that says healthcare. Okay, any other answers? I have two different answers. Any other answer? So 2019, 2020, have you seen this? You should have seen this segmental information. Look at the revenue. FMCG gives the highest revenue. However, from a gross profit standpoint, healthcare is high. Let's look at this. The highest in terms of profit is the healthcare. Second highest is FMCG, but in terms of revenue, FMCG is the highest. You should know the reason by now. The reason is FMCG, the profit margins are low. Healthcare, since it's medicine, the profit margins will be obviously high. Profit margins will be obviously high. And they seem to be making losses in the leisure, power, and energy industries. Leisure, power, and energy industries, they seem to be making a very clear loss. So I hope that you joined our pre-scene analysis sections for the other subjects, and your respective lecturers would have taken through a complete analysis of these financial numbers, which we will not be doing in today's session because that has been already done in your previous subject pre-scene analysis, right? So let's go back to where we were. So we looked at the FMCG. The FMCG sector adapts the company's health and safety approach and takes a proactive approach to manage its health and safety practices by requiring all workers engaged in production to wear masks and sanitize their hands regularly to prevent the spread of viral infections. You don't want any infection to be in the products, and those contaminated products to get into circulation within the general public. It's a problem. So it looks like this sector adapts health and safety principles to the core. Healthcare. As one of Sri Lanka's leading private healthcare service providers, HCL Healthcare comprises of HCL Pharmaceuticals, which is the largest distributor of pharmaceuticals, surgical, diagnostics products in Sri Lanka. Look at that. HCL Healthcare, the largest distributor of pharmaceuticals, surgical and diagnostic products in Sri Lanka, and also the manufacturer of pharmaceutical products under HCL brand. Brilliant. So they are big, right? And HCL Hospitals, which is internationally accredited, being a trusted provider of exceptional healthcare services in Sri Lanka, HCL Hospital provides community-based expert healthcare services and has now developed into a chain of fully fledged multifunctional hospitals. HCL Hospitals currently operates in Nugegoda, Ragama and Kandy, and also has one of the largest diagnostic laboratory chains in Sri Lanka. EMAS Labs, yeah. In a relatively short period of time, HCL Hospitals has earned a reputation for ensuring the best customer experience and superior clinical outcomes. So they seem to be having a good reputation, a good brand image. This sector places great importance on health and safety of its employees and has in place practices that promote their health, such as measurements to prevent viral infections and regular annual checkups. Very important, especially when you have employees in this sector, you want to ensure that they are free from any ailments, right? The healthcare sector has shown steady growth in all areas and currently has the following market share. If you see the good market shares in the first two, right? Pharmaceutical, surgical, and diagnostic products, 28%, huge. Diagnostic laboratory, 20%. Hospitals, relatively low because obviously there are these Navaloka, Lanka hospitals that are still a bit larger than HEMAS, right? Which means there is an opportunity for further growth from a hospital standpoint. Leisure and travel. HCL Travels, the outbound and inbound travel arm of HCL, specializes in creation of tailor-made tours and destinations around the globe. You can come into Sri Lanka or you can go out of Sri Lanka. HCL Travels is one of the largest B2B outbound travel agents in Sri Lanka. It has proved itself over the years to be one of the best in the business, right? Business to business. So probably HCL sells tour packages to the customer and then buys packages from other hotels abroad to serve the customer. So then it's a business to business model. Is a multiple award winner and has gained more accolades even during the year under review. Brilliant. That is, the year under review is 2020. HCL Hotel mostly attracts inbound tourism from all over the world through online bookings made from economical tailor-made packages it offers to tourists, right? Mainly looks like the focus is tourists. Doesn't look like a lot of focus is placed in the local market. I mean, when I say local market, local customers. Maybe that's an opportunity that HCL can look for this specific sector. Logistics. HCL Logistics is specialized in creating tailor-made logistics solution for import and export customers in Sri Lanka. See, imports and exports, right? It provides special logistic arrangements in warehouse in Cebu. It is equipped with latest technology. Perfect. And provides budgetary logistics solutions. What does budgetary logistics? It should come to your head. Porters' generic strategies, and they are looking at cost leadership, right? Because it's giving budgetary logistics solutions, trying to charge a lower price to the customer. Looks like that is their approach for this segment. So don't be surprised if you are given a question to apply the Porter's generic strategies for the logistics arm or for any division, so to speak. Power and energy. SCL's power and energy sector has 5 windmills in Mana that generate 5 megawatts of electricity using renewable energy. The energy is supplied to the national grid. However, due to recent government policies, sustainability of this sector is a question. Yes, because this is an alternate energy form. You are providing an alternate type of electricity in Sri Lanka. So the future is questionable because this industry is heavily impacted by changes to government policy. That is a threat. In your SWOT, you should have identified it as a threat, right? So let's pause there for a moment. Couple of things. Number one, we may have to go for 15 minutes extra. So we may have to go until this session until 9:45 because I want to spend a little bit of more time with you in an attempt for us to be better prepared with the case study. That is number one. I don't want to rush through just to finish it. Number two, I will also upload some material like the SWOT analysis, the cultural analysis of this company. We will be uploading it into our website so that you can access that material and download it for use. You can use that material or refer those materials, which will give you a lot of insight based on the analysis of this case study. Yeah, perfect. So let's move on. Human capital. HCS has adapted human resource policies and best practices and tracks indicators including attrition, diversity, occupational health and safety and training hours in all of its SBUs through a sustainability performance management system, right? Great. So it talks about training, everything. See, performance management system. You should link it to your syllabus area, isn't it? Let's look at it. They talk about performance management, so you should be ready. Performance measurement, performance management. There you go. Human resources, under human resources, performance management. You should be ready. You should have an idea of performance management because they are directly using the term here. They're directly using the term here, which means you don't have an excuse not to be prepared. Yeah. So that is very important. Energy and emissions. The company's environment and energy management approach governs energy use and emission generation of all sectors. It mandates the adoption of lean energy practices and ensures the conservation of energy and minimizing carbon footprint, which means it is focusing on lean. It's focusing on a lean approach. It's trying to reduce. Look at this lean energy. They want to minimize carbon footprint, which means this company is trying to be having a high level of social responsibility as well as ethical. So you should have a clear idea of CSR, of ethics, very important, right? So there is the ownership structure with Edward holding 30%, and there are some additional information, financials, which I'm not going to go through today. So we'll go ahead with Annexure 2, which is the pharmaceutical market in Sri Lanka. Though there is an increasing demand for pharmaceuticals, especially for chronic diseases. What are chronic diseases? Chronic diseases are generally diseases that you generally permanently have with you, right? Like for example, you have diabetes. There's no cure for diabetes. You have it with you. When you generally have high blood pressure, it's a chronic condition. You have high blood pressure with you. You understand? And in Sri Lanka, we do have a rise in chronic diseases. So that's what this is trying to say. Pharmaceutical expenditure in Sri Lanka in 2018 was 664 million, which was a growth of 3.3% from previous year. So what are the strengths of the industry? Robust pharmaceutical market growth. Market is growing. Sri Lanka has a national health service, and consultation and treatments are provided free at public hospitals, which means at public hospitals, consultations, treatments are free, which means there'll be demand. People will access healthcare resources needed. In some countries, people have to pay for it, so they don't go to the hospital or anywhere, so they don't buy the medicine. But here people will buy the medicine, or the government will buy the medicine on behalf of the people. Government's commitment to providing access to healthcare. So government is working hard, implementing policies to ensure that people can access healthcare as and when needed, right? Opportunity. Sri Lanka depends totally on imports for its requirements of bulk drugs. So that's an issue. Why is it an opportunity? Because HCL will find this as an opportunity because they have a manufacturing facility locally to make drugs. The local industry is yet to catch up with the needs of the country. So which means there is a lot of potential. There is a lot of potential for HCL to develop medicine, manufacture the medicine, right? In October 2018, the Sri Lankan Chamber of Pharmaceutical Industry, SLCPI, said that despite persistent appeals, the government has failed to address the urgent issue of a fair and proper pricing mechanism for pharmaceutical products in light of the depreciating Sri Lankan rupee against the US dollar. You see that? There's a problem. You have your dollar, which is appreciating against the rupee, but we are still importing, which means there's a lot of money going out of the country. It's a problem and we don't have a solution for that. In addition, SLCPI highlighted that 11 imported medicines are currently being or have already been withdrawn from the Sri Lankan market because there is no pricing formula or drug price ceilings introduced in 2016. In September 2008, ODOC, an e-health platform, introduced an online medical consultation platform that enables subscribers and their families to have unlimited medical consultations with experienced general practitioners and specialists. This is an innovation that will facilitate access to healthcare services and prescriptions. Yes, when people have prescriptions, they might buy medicines. So that's an opportunity for HCL. You see that? So you may have a question, why can HCL have their doctors in their hospital in this ODOC platform? Can they have a feature where people can buy medicine on the ODOC platform itself online? See now, use of technology, e-business, where people can upload the prescription onto the ODOC platform. It comes to HCL and HCL delivers these medicines. Can that be an opportunity? Who knows? It can be an area that can be tested in technology. Let's look at what is the industry forecast for pharmaceutical. Sri Lanka's pharmaceutical market is likely to expand in the coming years. The country's growing and aging population will act as key drivers of market growth. Additionally, there is a latent and growing demand for the treatment of chronic diseases. So there's a demand to treat these diseases that some of which I spoke about a little while back, which will be supported by government efforts to upgrade healthcare services. The government's pro-generic medicine policies as well as low per capita. What is pro-generic medicine policies? What it means is government is trying to promote generic names, right? There are some drugs that have specific brand names which are patented and very expensive. You know, generic drugs there is similar medicine is produced by multiple pharmaceuticals. So government is supporting the pro-generic medicine policy, which means good opportunity for HCL to make these drugs, as well as low capita spending on medicine will be an added advantage to generic producers like those in India. So why can't HCL be a generic producer? Right? So that's the question you need to ask. By 2022, the pharmaceutical market in Sri Lanka is expected to reach a value of $787 million USD, posting a 5-year compound annual growth of 4.1. The decision by the Ministry of Health and Indigenous Medical Services in Sri Lanka in July 18 to reduce the price of nearly 25 medicines used to treat diabetes. Look at that. Price of medicines is shrinking, right? Is reducing. The government is reducing the price of medicine, which means what is going to happen here is people are going to buy more medicine. So when you reduce the price of medicine, people are going to buy more medicine, which means there's going to be an increase in the demand for the medicine, which is an opportunity for HCL, especially if HCL is considering to make the drugs in Sri Lanka, or if they want to make it at low cost, make it in India, make it in Bangladesh. They can look at those options as strategies. Sri Lanka's health minister reduced the price of 48 essential drugs in 2016 to provide greater accessibility to patients. Prices of 272 drugs of various other brands were also reduced. Most of the medicines were for chronic illnesses that require long-term treatment. See? So which means there is continuous demand for this type of medicine. You need to understand that there will be a continuous demand for this type of medicine. So the industry is growing. Around 85% of pharmaceutical products in Sri Lanka are imported, and the exchange rate significantly impacts pricing. You see that? While the capping of prices has increased the affordability of certain drugs, the risk of making imports unsustainable has become a major concern for the industry, especially in the light of the Sri Lankan rupee depreciating. So what it means is, even though the government has reduced the price of these medicine, still, since we are importing most of these, the exchange rate comes into play and becomes difficult for us to sell at those prices which the government is saying. See, all of these factors are giving you idea that HCL having a manufacturing facility in Sri Lanka can consider the manufacturing of some of these key drugs. Non-communicable diseases are on the rise, and they are leading cause of morbidity and mortality. 62% of the total reported global deaths are caused by NCD. So that's another type of diseases, right? Which doesn't spread from person to person, but even again, once again, it's like diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease, all of those will fall under your NCDs, right? 65% of the total deaths in Sri Lanka are due to cancer, diabetes, serious cardiovascular and chronic respiratory diseases, which are also NCD, right? So these are all chronic conditions which require long-term treatment. Right, so that is the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceutical trade, despite ongoing government efforts to boost local pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity, experts say that Sri Lanka will continue to rely on imports to meet its domestic demand for medicine. So Sri Lanka has to still, continue to, even though we have locally that we can manufacture, but still majority of it, we need to rely on imports. Currently, 90% of the country's pharmaceutical needs are imported. In fact, the local drug industry remains underdeveloped, and pharmaceutical foreign investment may remain subdued in the near term. Thus, Sri Lanka is likely to observe an increase in drug imports over the next 5 years, especially to meet the demand for more advanced treatments. Pharmaceutical imports in Sri Lanka are expected to reach a value of 545 million by 2022, which is a growth of 4.1% over a 2-year period, right? Compound growth. According to data available for 2017 and 18, major sources of drug imports include the importing from India, 49%, Pakistan, 8%, US, 3%, Switzerland, 3%, France, 4%, UK, Bangladesh, and others. India is the largest importing partner of Sri Lanka, with almost 50% of the country's needs being met by imports from India. You need to find out what's the reason. Is the cost in India lower? Why can't we do it in Sri Lanka? Why can't HCL meet the cost in Sri Lanka? Because we are heavily impacted by, obviously, the exchange rate movement, right? The Drug Regulatory Authority of Sri Lanka is the Cosmetics, Devices and Drug Regulatory Authority, CDDA. CDDA, so you need to understand that these are all stakeholders. This is a stakeholder. CDDA intends to provide a legislative framework to control the use of pharmaceutical drugs with respect to their registration, manufacture, importation, sale, labeling, transportation, advertising, distribution of samples. Every element of drug manufacturing, selling, distributing, everything is monitored with a legal framework by this body. Don't be surprised if you have a question on how do you manage this stakeholder. It's a key player. Remember the Mendelow's stakeholder mapping? This is a key player. The local good manufacturing practices, GMP, compliance certification is required to start manufacturing for the domestic market. Whilst a current good manufacturing practices compliance certificate of World Health Organization is required for exporting. So they're giving you an idea that you need this certificate to manufacture. They haven't given information whether HCL already has this certificate. So there can be an area where in your unseen part, they can tell you what are these requirements. what are these requirements to get the compliance, and they can ask you to say how the operations of HCL needs to change to get this compliance. It can come in your unseen part at the exam, right? So next of all is all financial analysis data, right? Let's go to the slide. Let's recap. Let's look at the summary of what we went through, right? Let's look at the summary. So we've seen that HCL is large, right? You noted that HCL is large. It is ethical. They have a philosophy. They are diversified. They have a vision of growing internationally. They have continuous growth that they've showcased over a period of time. They give autonomy to their employees, freedom to their employees to make decisions. They are SBU driven. They have SBU structure. There's a growth potential for healthcare, huge growth potential for healthcare based on the pharmaceutical industry, the points that we just discussed. And they are also impacted very clearly by COVID-19. Key highlights of your case. And this is your vision and your mission. This is your company structure. You have the board of directors. You have the 5 divisions. The drugs division of Bangladesh, where HCL has a 35% ownership, will come under probably the healthcare section. So this is very clearly a product divisionalized structure. It's a product divisionalized structure. This is how the structure looks like. Don't worry about it. This content will be uploaded onto our website for you to make use of for your exam, right? So how the strategy, right? So how did the strategy, evolution of strategy, right? How did it transfer? So I given very clearly with the years, how they have grown. That's what we went through. So they did retail in 1978. They expanded to provide laboratory supplies and medical equipment. In 85, they started FMCG. In 2004, they started the hospital. In 2008, they were restructured to HCL and they diversified into tourism and logistics. In 2009, with a plan to diversify into tourism and logistics. In 2009, they entered the leisure and travel sector with a 5-star hotel in 2012. In 2010, they entered the logistics sector. In 2014, they entered the power and energy sector. In 2019, they bought 35% of the stated capital of Healthcare Drugs Bangladesh. First time they're going international. So internationalization, right? That is their strategy. That's how they've evolved. That's how they've grown. If you see, they've grown their own. So far, they have grown on their own. What is it called? What is that type of growth called? Can you all tell me what is that type of growth called? What is that type of growth called? There is a specific term. They've grown on their own. There you go. I have an answer. I have one person answering, and that's the right answer. Yes. Anyone else? What is that type of growth called? Yes, correct. The second answer is also right. Anyone else? So far, what you have been seeing in HCL is organic growth or internal growth. It's for the first time they've gone and purchased some ownership at this Bangladesh company. But if you can see in your case study, at a recent board meeting, Sisira submitted a board paper emphasizing the importance of looking for acquisitions and partnering, which is inorganic growth. So you need to look at strategic alliances, franchise partnering, especially if you're going to grow as a regional leader. Because you're going to go into new countries. That means you need to partner. Now comes this section, very important. Hope you have studied this. Entry strategies. You can do franchising, look at this, joint venture, strategic alliance, acquisition. You need to be very familiar with the advantages, disadvantages, because there will probably be a question. Based on it, you can think, right? Because they're saying it's important to do acquisitions, partnering, and then you talk about internationalization, becoming the leader of the region. Then this market entry strategy internationally is probably an area that you may get. You understand the logic, you understand how I'm trying to link it, right? So that is their growth. And from a strategy standpoint, look at this. They are diversifying as burns off, right? Internationalization, they have an internationalization vision. So you need to be very familiar with internationalization strategies, which is these market entry strategies. Have an idea of Hofstede, Porter's Diamond, Cage framework. These are the theories in your internationalization section. They're right now primarily into organic growth, and importance of looking for acquisitions and partnering is important, especially because they're going to go into new countries. Porter's generic strategies. Porter's generic strategies have an idea: cost leadership, differentiation, focus, right? So the market entry strategy, be familiar with this, right? What is their culture? If you have a question on culture, be very specific on the point. Strong history of why Edward wanted to start this business. The company has a growth mindset. It is tech-driven, focuses on international growth, and the hotels are 5-star, meaning they want the absolute best for their customer. Power, Edward and the divisional leaders hold a lot of power. They reward talent, right? And you can also say autonomy given to employees to make decisions, right? You can put that too. These are points you can talk about the culture if you ask a question, and you can write so many. You can go ahead and write so many. Overall SWOT analysis for the company. In the next few slides, let's look at the overall SWOT analysis for the company. SWOT for FMCG, SWOT for healthcare, SWOT for leisure and travel, SWOT for logistics, SWOT for power and energy. And let's talk a little bit about Edward's leadership, which we have already done, right? So let's take a look at the SWOT. Overall SWOT looks like a very established company, has a solid reputation, right? The company has a solid reputation. Diversified portfolio, which means risk is managed to a certain extent through diversification. Futuristic company focusing on technology. Edward has visionary style of leadership driven by ethics. Human capital driven workforce. Allowing people to make decisions, people are trained. Adoption of lean energy. You saw that they are focusing on lean energy. What are the weaknesses? Weak internal control and risk management. We saw that. Not going public or issuing shares or getting listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange to raise capital. That is stopping their growth a lot. Because right now, Edward is borrowing from friends, from banks. That's what he's doing right now. Maintaining the divisions as SBUs instead of separate legal entities. That's a problem that was highlighted by Prabhat, if you can remember. Opportunities, massive market in neighboring countries like India. You can export your medicine. Expanding the pharmaceutical division in the current context. Look at that. Expanding the pharmaceutical division in the current context is also an opportunity because the Sri Lankan changes to Sri Lankan government's policies. Exploiting current trade restrictions to expand local market share. You saw that? Import trade restrictions. So you manufacture locally. Make use of tax exemptions, facilitations given to free trade zone factories. Threats. General adverse pressure from stressed economic situation globally. Right now, economic situation is stressed around the globe because of the pandemic. So that is definitely a threat. Adverse impact from fractured supply chain due to the pandemic. What it means is, see, there is a supply chain where your resources come from, where your raw material come from. Those guys are also impacted because of the pandemic. So your production might be impacted. You may not be getting the right resources, right? A lot of non-essential imports have been stopped even in Sri Lanka. That can be a threat. Intense foreign competition related to overseas ventures. Hit on leisure and travel division due to the pandemic. Obvious hit to the leisure and travel division, direct hit. Frequent changes in government policies, rules and regulations because they are in industries which are impacted on government policies. If you look at the FMCG, remember I told you having a clear idea of each of the divisions is important because at the exam you may be given questions about specific divisions. We saw that in the pilot paper. The questions were focusing on specific divisions. So you have to be ready for them to test any specific division. So strengths, established brand name, a household name they say. They say that the FMCG is a household name in Sri Lanka, which makes products that are close to our national culture. And they have 25% market share, which is quite a big market share. The division is very well diversified into different types of products. And they follow the health guidelines of wearing masks, using hand sanitizers. Weakness, objectivity may be eroded due to related parties. Wife is the director of the FMCG, Edward's wife. Opportunities, potential to expand market share due to import restrictions. That's an opportunity. Locally, we can make the products. Now, non-essentials have been stopped. No? You can't import. And in the FMCG, you can exploit this. You will have a bigger market because there is a higher demand for local products. Branding opportunities through CSR related to COVID-19 relief programs, undertake relief programs and brand. This is a good opportunity to help the community out. Pursue new trade channel given the current context. Example, have online stores. Threats, general adverse pressure from stressed economic situation globally. You'll see this as a threat in all of the slides. Adverse impact from fractured supply chain, another common one you will see, you saw it previously as well. Government restrictions, competition from multinationals functioning in Sri Lanka, like Unilever makes FMCG. So there are multinationals. So you'll have some threat from those companies, right? Healthcare division, established brand name as a trusted provider of exceptional healthcare services in Sri Lanka. Reputation is very high in the healthcare sector for HCL. Diversified within the division itself. They are into pharmacies, manufacturing, distribution, hospitals. So there's some form of diversification within the division, within the healthcare division. And they have SLSI certification, which is your ISO, and they follow health guidelines to run their operation. Weakness, doubts on upholding the best practice to maintain the certification, very important. Government is very specific. If you don't abide by the rules we say, we'll pull off your certification. Dependent on imported raw materials is another one, right? Because you can have still restrictions on the imported raw materials that you need for the healthcare division because a lot of the medical equipment and all we don't produce. You have to import. Threats, general adverse pressure from stressed economy, again adverse impact from fractured supply chain, government restrictions and exchange rate changes are impacting because in this sector you have to import things, which means if the exchange rate move in the wrong direction, you are impacted as a business. Leisure and travel. So what happens in leisure and travel? What are the strengths? Tailor-made, customized packages, established business-to-business channels you have, strict assurance from the government to battle COVID. Sri Lankan government is doing whatever possible to battle COVID and bring the tourism sector back on track. That support the government is trying their best to give. Weaknesses, limited diversification in tour packages. Not focusing on local customers with localized packages as we spoke about, right? Opportunities is potential to launch an awareness campaign based on Ayurvedic tourism, which helps fight COVID. How is that? Look at how Ayurvedic treatment can fight some of the illnesses that are out there and create tourism through medication. Link the two divisions. There is what you call medical tourism. Bring people from different countries to come and do treatment in your hospitals in Sri Lanka. Major opportunity. If you go to Lanka hospitals, you will see there is a specific count of a Maldivian patients. There's a lot of Maldivian patients come to Sri Lanka for treatment. That's a big opportunity. Again, branding opportunities through CSR related to COVID-19 relief programs. Focus on the local market and introduce packages within the country. Do that. Sign up with government to provide quarantine facilities for inbound passengers. Give your hotels out maybe for quarantine and make some cash through the process, right? Threats, general adverse pressure from stressed economic situation globally. Again, government restrictions on travel and leisure that is impacting the industry, obviously lockdown. Number of flights to the country has significantly reduced. Highly dynamic market, extremely sensitive to external shocks. Whenever there is changes externally in the pest factors, this market directly gets impacted because this is not an essential, this is luxury. Travel and leisure and travel is luxury. You do it only if you have the money to do it. If you don't, and if the economic situation is depressed, the demand for this plummets. Demand for this drops. Yeah. Logistics. You're giving strengths, you're giving a tailor-made solution. Warehouse facility is a solid value addition. And an important one that I am going to put now is budgetary packages, right? So let's put budgetary packages. Weaknesses, backup warehousing space to exploit during COVID situation. See that? You have it only in Sidhu and Kapunayaka, right? There are no imports and exports much happening these days. So if you had a facility somewhere in Colombo, you can use it for a different purpose. Now your facility is in Sidhu and Kapunayaka, far away. Bringing things down here is going to be a challenge. Opportunities. Make use of restrictions to earn demurrage fees from customers by providing relevant facilities, right? What is demurrage fees? If you keep your products late in the warehouse, you have to pay for the warehouse, these late fees. So that's an opportunity. Attract new local customers who are unable to carry out their own logistics due to the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, some customers may not have the staff or the bandwidth to run their own logistics arm. So you can tell them, we will run the logistics for you. That's an opportunity because some companies may have sent their employees home to reduce cost. Threats, general adverse pressure from stressed economic situation globally. You saw that? So pressure, anyways, because of the COVID situation. Tight restrictions on global freight and logistics because of still many countries having the lockdown measures in place. Trade restrictions which limit imports and exports. Because, of course, of the current pandemic, right? Power and energy sector, what are the strengths? Agreement with the Ceylon Electricity Board. That's the strength. And it's a sustainable power source because it's windmill. There's no depletion of resources. Or depletion, what is depletion? Resources don't finish because it's windmill, right? Weakness, seems like a heavy ROI. Seems like a heavy investment. We don't have much information about whether the ROI was considered. It's not a traditional source of power in Sri Lanka. So government policies may change and you may not be able to run this business model for the future. That's another problem. Opportunities, government is committed towards sustainable energy. So there is a chance. Now you can brand your company as a responsible company because you are into sustainable power. What are the threats? Again, government restrictions and policy changes. And also Sri Lanka's natural weather conditions are changing and windmill is based on wind. And Sri Lanka's natural weather conditions are changing. We are a tropical country. So you understood, right? So this SWOT is very important. Your deep idea about each of these sectors is critical. So when I share this material, go through this. Have a thorough understanding. When you write the answers, bring in some of these points that I've included on this slide. So leadership, we discussed at length. This is the same content. If you go through the bullets, it's the same content that is there in the leadership paragraph. Be ready for questions on leadership style, leadership theories, contingency style, You be ready for a question where there is an autocratic leader who comes in and you have to advise to the autocratic leader why it is important to have a democratic style of leadership for HCL success. Be ready for those, right? Have an idea on talent management. Why talent management is important? Because Edward continues to talk about training and developing people. So there's a specific section in your syllabus about talent management. There's a specific section about employee motivation. Go through that. There's a specific section on participation in decision making as a motivator. If you see your study text, if I take this and find it on your study text, there's a specific section here completely about why it is important for employees to participate in decision making, right? So go through that. That is very important. And go through leadership theories, like I said before. Yeah. Best practices, product quality, service quality. Remember, I told you, go through the operations management sector. Look at warehousing, transport, warehouse management systems. Look at how integrated logistics management can help. Just in time, total quality management. The quality theories by Deming, Crosby, Juran, Kaizen, 5S, Six Sigma. Be familiar with these principles because they are talking about a specific section that focuses on best practice, product quality, and service quality. I'm going to skip that. Technology areas, be clear on big data, cloud computing, e-business. I've done a small analysis here. You can see how I've just given an example of how you can apply big data to the healthcare sector, how data you can collect about patients, about the medicine you use, and how you can do predictive modeling. You can go through this section in full when I upload the content into our website. Yeah. So, yep. When I upload this, you will also see this particular slide. See, be prepared for anything. I told you that about 3 or 4 times in today's session. Be prepared for anything. These are some additional areas which you can think about. I'm not saying that these questions will come. No. I'm saying these are areas that you can think about. Identify, analyze CSF for each HCL SBU using the CSF formulation process. Analyze HCL's mission statement and evaluate if HCL is abiding by its mission statement. I'm not giving you the questions. I'm asking you to think about this, right? You're a business analyst and Edward and Cecilia come to you to decide whether or not to go public. Evaluate the benefits and drawbacks. Maybe you will not get this question in this paper, but maybe somewhere else. So be prepared. The board has asked to decide to turn SPUs into their own separate legal entities. Edward wants you to suggest a change management strategy because that's a change. And change management is a part of your strategic management syllabus and how you can use a Levin's model or your Kotler's model of leadership to change. Choose 2 markets HCL operates in and identify whether blue ocean strategies or red ocean strategies would be best for each of those markets. See that? Prepare a BCG, Boston matrix of HCL SBU and identify where in product life cycle they are located. Then analyze and formulate marketing strategies for each of the SBUs. Some things for you to think about. I'm not saying you prepare for this, you prepare, but these are all things that you can think about, that I thought about. Likewise, you may be able to think about other areas. And that concludes our session on examination tips and tricks that we went through, number 1, and number 2 on the pre-scene analysis. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for any questions in the interest of time. We have very less time. We are 20 minutes late to complete the session, but we spent quite a bit of productive time that I think would be of great value to you in preparing for this examination. So I'll give you about 2 to 3 minutes to ask me any question that you may have. You can unmute and ask, or you can type it on chat. So it looks like none of you all have any questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Please feel free to reach out to Infinity Space. We'll be able to gladly help you out even at a personal level. Before we wrap up, I wish all of you the very best for your upcoming examinations. Spend time on preparation. Spend time on practicing answers, past papers, which is extremely important. Do not lose hope. Every day, wake up with an objective, wake up with a goal, and ensure you seek to achieve that, and the results will come. So all the very best. Thank you so much for the opportunity to contribute towards your success. Have a good night. Bye-bye.